Welcome to our channel. We're so happy to have you here. Don't forget to subscribe and help us hit our goal of 100,000 subscribers. The first photograph ever taken, 1826 or 1827, the oldest surviving photograph to exist. It was taken by pioneer photographer Joseph Nicephore Niepce. The scene depicts a view from a window in Nicephore Niepce's estate known as Le Gras and Saint-Loup de Varennes, Bourgogne, France, in 1826 or 1827. General William Tecumseh Sherman, circa 1865. Side profile of Union Army Major General and the commanding general of the U.S. Army, William Tecumseh Sherman, in his Union Army military uniform in circa 1865. Dali Atomicus, 1948. The photographic artwork by Philippe Halsman called Dali Atomicus, showing 3 cats, water, an easel, a chair, and Salvador Dali all frozen in mid-air, 1948. This was the 28th attempt at taking this photograph. The Solvay Conference on Quantum Mechanics, 1927. The 1927 Solvay Conference on Quantum Mechanics at the Institut International de Physique Solvay in Brussels, Belgium. This image features many of the greatest scientists in modern history. Some of those that you may recognize are Albert Einstein, Marie Curie, Max Planck, Niels Bohr, and Auguste Piccard, King George V, and Tsar Nicholas II. Together, 1913. First cousins and royals Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, left, and King George V of the United Kingdom, right, photographed together wearing military uniforms in Berlin, Germany, 1913. The Manhattan Bridge under construction, 1909. The construction of the Manhattan Bridge on the East River in New York City. This photograph was taken on March 23, 1909. The bridge finished construction in 1909 and first opened up on the 31st of December, 1909. Soviet prisoner of war, 1940. An injured Soviet prisoner of war, POW, dressed in new clothes near the Arctic Circle in Rovaniemi, Finland, during the Winter War on the 6th of January, 1940. Dr. Werner von Braun with 5 F-1 engines. Dr. Werner von Braun, an aerospace engineer that was a leading figure in Nazi German rocket technology and then United States rocket technology, photographed standing in front of 5 F-1 rocket engines in circa 1969. Teach Quang Duc self-immolation, 1963. Teach Quang Duc, a Buddhist monk, performing self-immolation, setting himself on fire, in Saigon on June 11, 1963, in protest to the persecution of Buddhists by the South Vietnamese Roman Catholic Christian government. Joseph Stalin, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and Winston Churchill at the Tehran Conference, 1943. Joseph Stalin, left, Franklin D. Roosevelt, center, and Winston Churchill, right, on the veranda of the Soviet legation in Tehran during the conference in November 1943. Rosa Parks being indicted 1956. Rosa Parks being fingerprinted by Lieutenant D.H. Lackey as one of the people indicted as leaders of the Montgomery bus boycott on February 22, 1956. She was one of 73 people rounded up by deputies that day after a grand jury charged 113 African Americans for organizing the boycott. British Army veterans of the Crimean War, 1856. Soldiers of the Coldstream Guards, left to right, Joseph Numa, John Potter, and James Deal, photographed in circa 1856. The Crimean War was fought between October 1853 and February 1856. The first photograph featuring a person, 1838. A photograph of the Boulevard du Temple in Paris, France, in 1838. It was taken by Louis Daguerre and shows a person having his boots polished near the bottom left of the photograph. It is believed to be the earliest image to show a living person. Theodore Roosevelt jumping over a fence on horseback, circa 1902. 26th President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt, jumping over a fence while on horseback in circa 1902. The Eiffel Tower under construction, 1888. The famous French landmark, the Eiffel Tower, photographed on November 23, 1888, during its construction. The construction lasted from January 1887 until March 1889. Prisoners liberated at Buchenwald concentration camp 1945. Prisoners that were held in Buchenwald concentration camp near Weimar in Germany, photographed after they were liberated by the U.S. troops of the 80th Division. This photograph was taken on the 16th of April 1945, 5 days after liberation. Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel can be seen on the second row, 7th from left. Last photograph of Vladimir Lenin, 1923. The final photograph taken of Vladimir Lenin. He is seen with his sister Anna Ilyinichna Yelizarova Ulyanova and his doctor A.M. Kojevnikov in Gorky in May 1923. USS Bunker Hill after it was hit by 2 kamikazes, 1945. A photograph on the USS Bunker Hill aircraft carrier after it was hit by 2 kamikazes within 30 seconds on the 11th of May, 1945 off of Kyushu, Japan. 372 died and 264 were wounded. Emmeline Pankhurst arrested outside Buckingham Palace, 1914. Suffragette leader Emmeline Pankhurst being carried away from Buckingham Palace in London, England, after being arrested while trying to present a petition to King George V of the United Kingdom, 21st May 1914. Neil Armstrong after walking on the moon, 1969. Neil Armstrong, photographed by Buzz Aldrin shortly after completing the first-ever moonwalk on July 20th, 1969. The Valley of the Shadow of Death, 1855. The famous photograph, The Valley of the Shadow of Death, taken on 23 April 1855 by Roger Fenton during the Crimean War. This war was the first that was documented with photographs. Herbert Hoover, Oath of Office, 1929. Former President, then Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, William Howard Taft, administering the oath of office to 31st U.S. President Herbert Hoover on the east portico of the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. on March 4, 1929. Japanese Samurai in Egypt, 1864. A group of Japanese samurai photographed in front of the Sphinx in Giza, Egypt during a visit to the country, 1864. Head of the Statue of Liberty on display in France, 1878. The completed head of the Statue of Liberty on display at the 3rd Paris World Fair, Exposition Universelle, in Paris, France, in 1878. The most decorated dog of World War I, circa 1920. Sergeant Stubby, the most decorated dog of World War I, photographed wearing his military uniform and badges in circa 1920. Martin Luther King, Jr. at the March on Washington, 1963. Martin Luther King, Jr. photographed among a crowd during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom on August 28, 1963. At this event, MLK delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech, National Archives/Public Domain. Lunch atop a skyscraper, 1932. One of the most famous photos in history, Lunch atop a skyscraper, was taken on the 20th of September, 1932, and shows workers enjoying lunch while sitting on a steel beam in Manhattan, New York City during the construction of the Rockefeller Center. Grotto in an iceberg, 1911. Geologist Thomas Griffith Taylor and meteorologist Charles Wright photographed on the 5th January 1911 at the entrance of a grotto in the side of an iceberg with the Terra Nova ship in the background. This was a part of the British Antarctic expedition led by Captain Robert Falcon Scott, which lasted from 1910 to 1913. Photograph of a Bedouin warrior, 1900. A Bedouin warrior, a nomadic Arab people who have historically inhabited the desert regions in North Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, Iraq, and the Levant, photographed in Jerusalem in 1900. 9 monarchs at King Edward VII's funeral, 1910. The most monarchs photographed together in history, they were together at Windsor Castle in England for the funeral of King Edward VII of the United Kingdom on May 20th, 1910. Standing from left to right, Håkon VII of Norway, Ferdinand of Bulgaria, Manuel II of Portugal, Wilhelm II of Germany, George I of Greece, and Albert I of Belgium. Seated, from left to right, Alfonso XIII of Spain, George V of the United Kingdom, and Frederick VIII of Denmark.